Good afternoon, Cowboys Nation. Or should I say good morning on this wonderful Monday. Hey, how's it going? Few games broke our way, a couple didn't yesterday. If you're rooting for the team to go on to the playoffs and hopefully have some success, but always bet on the star, baby. Always bet on the star because we're here at Starstruck with Mack. Shout out to the one star. You can use my name Starstruck for your move, and that's all right. You do it with flair. Even though you're a Raiders fan, it's all right. We'll let you use it. But we're starstruck because, hey, that's what it is. It's the star that took and made me a Cowboys fan. Got some sad news. It looks like on the injury front, we know that we won't be with our boy Zach Martin for the rest of the year. Hopefully this isn't a career-ending injury. And Jerry went as much on his radio show and said that he doesn't think this will be a career-ending injury and that he doesn't think that it'll prompt him to retire. But he is a free agent after this year, and Zach's really saying, let's get better before we take and decide what the future holds as far as a career. Hopefully it'll be wearing this star next year. Would love to see him back and prove that this wasn't the Zach Martin that we knew all year, where he had his struggles and that he was fighting through injury, that he is still the man along that offensive line. And let these young pups like Tyler Smith and Cooper Beebe learn from him. And Guyton as well, whether Guyton's playing left tackle or right tackle, they all can learn something from the Senator, who has been a all-pro player for the Dallas Cowboys, all-pro person for the Dallas Cowboys, all-pro ambassador for the Dallas Cowboys. But also, we knew that Zach wasn't going to be playing as he's been put on IR. But news broke that Wanye Thomas is also going to miss this week's game. Now, on the good news of the injury front, it looks like CD Lamb is a go this week, as well as DeMarvion Overshawn. And we talked briefly about it on Dad and the Boys, but it looks like Jake Ferguson has cleared concussion protocol and has been able to practice this week, and he's a go. Now, as far as the secondary goes, we already are short Wanye Thomas as depth, and we've had a few guys go on IR, but we're looking at Trayvon Diggs is questionable. He was limited in practice over the last couple of days. He is questionable for the game. And Tyler Guyton along the offensive line, although he did not practice, they're being optimistic and saying questionable. I do probably look for him to be a scratch from the game or serve in a reserve capacity at best, and let Adoga do the heavy lifting there. And if needed, maybe use Guyton or slide Smith out and use TJ Bass in at guard. Moving parts. I mean, and at this time of the year, that's a lot. And, around the league, a lot of teams are saying, well, we're fighting injuries. None have fought more than the Dallas Cowboys this year on the injury front. And that includes the San Francisco 49ers, who have really been snake bitten as well on that side of the spectrum as well. But our Cowboys have had all pros and pro bowlers, starters miss quantity of time, to include our starting franchise quarterback. That puts a big hit on the record. It puts a big hit on production, and they're still fighting. And that's something that Stephen Jones spoke of this week with Mike McCarthy. He said that the entire team is behind Mike, and they all are going to bat for him, saying they want Mike to have the coaching job. what, frankly, I do too. Uh, I think he got a kind of a raw deal this year with not providing him the quality depth throughout free agency. Now, we weren't going to go out and land any major starters or contributors, high dollar free agents. Derrick Henry was never in our ballpark, uh, folks. Neither was Saquon Barkley, who I would have much rather have had. One, to keep him out of Philly, and the other, he's a quality talent. But again, we've adjusted our franchise model to where we're not paying running backs that kind of money, hopefully going forward. As we're evolving into a passing league and a passing team, with doing the running back by committee, I think that the money needs to be invested minimally at the running back position, along with a good quality draft pick. Unfortunately, this last year, you can say what you want to about Dallas adding talent during the draft. It never worked out. I mean, it was just, they were going to be reaching for a running back if they got one. That it would have been a reach. At anywhere they drafted, the running backs that were on the board were a reach. You can disagree with me in the comments and have a conversation about that. We'll discuss it all day long. But in my opinion, it would have been a reach. And the one thing I want Dallas to do when they're on the board in the draft room is to remain true to their draft board and draft quality guys that can contribute. And I mean, Marshawn Leland was there. I mean, did you want a running back or Cooper Beebe? I mean, we needed a starting center, and Cooper Beebe's done great this year, and he will only get better. So, I mean, I don't want the team. I want them to draft a good running back, but I don't want them to reach. I still think that, this year, I don't know that I want, although the kid is awesome in Boise State, when they get on the draft board next year, wherever we're picking, whether we're pre playoff or post layoff team in the 20s. Ashton Genty is an awesome player. I mean, he can flat out run the ball. You know, but I don't know that I want a first round running back. I'd rather draft for the trenches in the first round because I do not see Travis Hunter coming to us. I'm sorry, son. I know Michael's been tanked for Trav for a long time. And, we use Travis Hunter on our Madden team. So we don't want him to go to an NFC East rival, but I just don't see us getting him. I think he will actually end up in Jacksonville as a number 1 overall pick. But having seen him up with my eyeballs, watching him play against Duke this year and Durham, I kind of am interested in, hopefully we can draft this Hampton kid out of Carolina. I'm not a big Tar Heel guy, but if we can land a quality running back, and that kid is quality. I mean, he was the only reason that Carolina was even in that game. And definitely one reason if they would have kept feeding him the ball, we wouldn't have came back and won. I honestly believe that, but they wouldn't. For some reason, Mack Brown went away from him, and I'm okay with that because it allowed us to have a great comeback and win the game. So I'm all right with that. Now, so I'm thinking drafting the trenches, either offensive line, if there's a quality one there, defensive line, if there's there, and then get the running back. And I wouldn't even be. Michael brought up a point the other day when we was conversing. He said, go out and get this kid from Arizona. We had him on our Madden as well, this McMillan kid. I'm okay with that. Wide receiver in the first, running back in the second. Let's get this offense going for Dak when he comes back. Give him more targets, more weapons. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting as the offseason approaches and as it comes about, what happens as we prepare for the draft. I do have full faith in Will McClay. He's given us quality picks throughout. We're leading the league in all pros drafted. Now, got to ask yourself, if we're drafting all pros, why isn't that equating to wins on the team? But there again, the last 3 seasons we've won 12. We've had 12 regular season wins each year. Went 12-5 each year for 3 consecutive years. One of the winningest programs in the league. Just seems to fall apart in the postseason. Now that could be injuries. I with the Green Bay game last year, we ran into a hot team. And then you turn around and you got Gilmore goes down in the final game, or the final couple of weeks of the season, and with a shoulder injury. And now Dan Quinn is trying to figure out, how do I compensate for Stephon Gilmore being hurt? Well, he goes to zone, and they just Love just torches us in the zone. I mean, we can never recoup from that. And he would not adjust. I mean, that's one of the big things about the coaching staff has been the adjustment phase, going from, this is not working. What are we doing? How are we going? Are we going to stick to our guns? No, we don't need to. We need to switch things up. We need to change. And they've been a little bit, especially with Dan there as defensive coordinator, they were pretty obstinate that they were going to stick to the way they were going to play. And folks, if it's not working, they say the definition of insanity is trying something repeatedly and getting the same results and then still doing it. Well, change it up and go from there. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to give you a second here. Well, welcome back, Cowboys Nation. For those of you watching us on Boom Broadcasting's YouTube channel, or those of you joining us on Fans First Sports Network on Spotify or wherever you're getting the feed, welcome back. I'd be remiss if, sorry about going to break so quickly, but sponsors needed to get their advertisements in and support the program. But I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on an article that I read earlier in the week, that Archie Manning, Archie's grandpa is wanting him to become a Dallas Cowboy. Me too, baby. Bring him on. I would tank for Arch. I'm sorry. 3 or 4 years down the road, Dak's ready to go wherever he's going to go. Hopefully he's got us a Super Bowl in the meantime. But whoo, would the stars align with Arch Manning? I'm sorry, Quinn Ewers, you're a good quarterback, and I watched the Texas-Georgia playoff game the other day for your conference championship for the SEC. I watched part of it. I didn't watch all of it, and I'm sorry, but Sarkisian, or the coach, whatever, Texas coach, Longhorns coach, why did you not put Arch Manning in? Why was Arch not playing in that second half? If he would have, it'd have been a different ball game, and I don't think Georgia would have took the game. But if you've been watching Starstruck with Mack on our YouTube or Fans First Sports Network, you know what this segment is. It's the top 100. And as a reminder, the prerequisite for this is it's players. It's not coaches. And the and you had to don the star for 1 year. Okay. You had to don the star for 1 year in your career. You could play elsewhere, but you had to be on the Cowboys for 1 year. And it's not about stats. It's not about the contributions you made to the team. It's how I felt about you. If you made my personal top 100 as a fan, now you could have rode the bench your entire career with Dallas, and you did something to make me like you a lot. Wanya hasn't started this year. He hasn't started in his career really, but he's made the top 100 because my son's interactions with him in Jacksonville a couple years ago when he was on the practice squad. So, with no further ado, we're going to get to number 70 in our countdown. The linebacker, Dat Gwynn, baby. Oh, man. Few people have retired and it hurt. I mean, well, some of them, yeah, Mike Irvin and different ones. But when Dat left, I mean, it just kind of took the soul out of the game. And we were in our down years in 2005. Let's face it, we were struggling. But man, he come on and he was such a firecracker in there and such a wonderful player. Just super cool dude, great ambassador for the team, like Zach Martin, great ambassador. Dat Gwynn was underrated. He was on the shorter side, smaller side, but boy, could he play linebacker. And few people in our organizations throughout the years have done a better job. And for some reason, I just like pulling for him. I mean, beyond the Dallas Cowboys part, if he'd went elsewhere, I'd have still pulled for him. Not against our Cowboys, of course, but, the 13, 14 other games in the season, he would have been up there. I know Michael, he take the press, and there's even a show here on Boom Broadcasting about fantasy football. I don't play fantasy football because I don't pull against Cowboy players. I want them to succeed. And I don't like pulling for other teams' players a lot. Yeah, there are some I pull for, some I like to watch, some of them I like to see succeed. I mean, who cannot enjoy watching Patrick Mahomes play? If you can't enjoy Patrick Mahomes, the athlete and the heart that he plays with, then you're probably not really, I don't want to question your football fandom, but you probably are a rival of his. So I mean, it's one of those things where Dat Gwynn's one of those guys that if he'd went elsewhere, as long as it wasn't the NFC East, I would have pulled for him. Now DeMarco Murray ran into that, loved him in Dallas, but he left and he went to the Eagles. Well, I'm not pulling for you, son. Just not pulling for you there. Now, that brings up an interesting fact about the cat that holds number 69. I like this dude when he was a Redskin. Scoring the touchdown, hitting a home run, Alfred Morris. Besides he wore one of my favorite numbers in the number 46 on our franchise, one of the few people that ever don the 46 as a Cowboy, Alfred Morris. An interesting story I heard when he was with Dallas. Amazingly, it never came out when he was a Redskin, or maybe I just never heard it. But the dude kept his money. He used his head. He wasn't one of these flashy kids that gets in the league and all of a sudden he's blowing money left and right. He's got his buddies that are all of a sudden out of the woodworks. This kid, when he was I think it was in college, he bought a car from his pastor for like $200 or something. First of all, I said pastor. So that tells me the kid goes to church and he's a Christian. God bless him. That put him up there too. But then he gets the $200. He drove it while he was still playing in the NFL, folks. He didn't go out and buy all this expensive stuff. He kept it real. And he was a workhorse running back and could carry the ball and he had a knack for hitting home runs after he scored the touchdown. And he could do it. I mean, he was that kid. He only played a few years in Dallas, 16 and 17. And then, he left in 18. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what happened. And then he came back in 19, but I think 19, it was more along the lines of practice squad and just a reserve role. Never really did a lot during 2019. But I mean, 2019 was one of those things where it's like, wow. Now, when I say 16 and 17, you got to remember 2016 was Zeke's rookie year. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was getting a lot of carries or anything like that. But I just like him. I mean, it wasn't like he was lighting up the scoreboards. He's not in the record books, the big record, like top 5 in the record books for the franchise in any category of rushing. But I just like the kid. I like his story. I like him. I liked him when he was a Redskin. It kind of shocked the press when he was doing my graphics and stuff. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, I liked him. And besides that, he was one of the few that donned the number 46 for the Cowboys, especially during the regular season. So, I mean, that made it even more special. Now, we're going to get into some childhood heroes, rounding out this next few here. Coming in at number 68 is none other than Harvey Martin. Harvey was a beast. Harvey Martin and Ed Too Tall Jones and Randy White. And then you throw in John Dutton and this one and that one there playing beside him. But Harvey and Jones, Too Tall Jones, they made my childhood was great. I mean, it was great. Seeing those guys sack quarterbacks, and Harvey, unofficially, I think, maybe other than DeMarcus Ware, is our all-time franchise leading sack artist. I mean, that's how good he was. But they just made it tough, and so, I mean, and you got to remember, this was a time when you had the Lambert boys in Pittsburgh, and you also had L.C. Greenwood, and you also had Mean Joe Green. But we had our own version. We had Ed Too Tall Jones, number 72, and number 79, Harvey Martin. And them boys were bad. Them boys were bad to the bone. I mean, that doomsday defense, man, it was something else. And so those childhood memories, getting to go in the classroom and celebrate on Mondays and Tuesdays when mom and daddy let me stay up late on Monday night, got school Tuesday morning. I was like, I catch the bus. I get up and catch the bus. Don't worry about that. I got this. Because they knew I had to see my boys. I had to see the boys. And this was one of the boys, and he just made it tough. If you was a opposing quarterback, whether you were Fran Tarkenton and scrambling for your life, Terry Bradshaw back there, whoever it was going to be rough sledding. Kenny Stabler, it did not matter. It was going to be rough sledding. Mr. Pastorini there in Oiler land, whoever you were, Jim Plunkett, it did not matter. It was going to be tough sledding, and these boys were bringing it. Every play, they were creating pressure, creating turnovers, creating sacks, hits, QB hits. And that was back when you didn't get flagged for playing anything above flag football. These boys unleashed and were rough on the quarterback. Quarterbacks in them days, whew, you run for your life because if you got hit, you might not get up. They wouldn't none of this personal foul, roughing the passer. He hit him in the head or he hit him below the knees. It was hit him where you could. And he did. And it made me happy. Because he wasn't on the other team chasing Roger. Because we couldn't have that. All right, moving along. Thank you, Mr. Harvey Martin, for all your years of, and it's kind of special because a lot of these cats, when I'm talking about my youth, a lot of these cats that were there, they didn't have it like today. They weren't making the money that they are today. Some of them actually had secondhand jobs in the off season. They weren't training year round. They weren't getting the big dollar contracts. Not only that, but these cats didn't have free agency. Once they were drafted. And that was a trade was a rarity. A trade in the NFL was a rarity. So Harvey Martin was there and he stayed there. Usually if a team traded you, it was one of two things. The guy below you was coming up and they didn't want to hold him back, or two, you was a nuisance. You were Thomas Hollywood Henderson, you were a headache to the coach and staff. You might have all the talent in the world, but they just didn't want to put up with you. So that's when you got to see guys move along to other teams. Craig Morton went to Denver, led them to a Super Bowl. We beat you in that Super Bowl, by the way, but you was not going to keep Roger Staubach off the field. It wasn't happening. Captain America was coming. And so you get assets for your franchise by trading these stars. Other guys you just cut and they might pick up with somebody, but it wasn't the free agency where I can go shop my services around back then. So we got to build a relationship and stuff with our team. And we got to sit there and watch them and root for them and know that when we bought their jersey or we bought merchandise with their name on it, it wasn't going anywhere. They weren't leaving. They were going to be there for the long haul for their career. For the majority of them, they were going to be there. Now, moving along to number 67, Leroy Jordan. I love me some linebackers some days. And Leroy was a beast. He was a beast. I wish we still had him. Could you imagine a player like Leroy Jordan in today's NFL playing alongside Micah Parsons and DeMarvion Overshawn? I like Eric Kendricks. Put Leroy in there. Let him be the middleman. Let them two fast cats run. And Leroy was, again, he was an all-around linebacker. He could do anything. Go back and look at clips. If you never watched him play and Harvey Martin play and the next cat coming up, go back and look at clips. If you're that young generation and you don't know what they played like, go look them up. See if you can find something on YouTube or NFL Films or something just to watch them play. These guys gave everything out there on the field, day in, day out. And it was constant. They were consistent week in, week out. And they were, the Steelers had Ham. We had Jordan. They had LC and Mean Joe. We had Harvey. We had Ed Too Tall Jones, and we had Randy White. So it was one of those things where you're in that frame of the 70s, my early years of fandom, and we were competing for Super Bowls amongst these two teams, and the Dolphins and the Colts, the Baltimore Colts then, that we were going up against to see who was going to be hoisting the Lombardi trophy. And these guys kept us in the fight year in and year out. And when I went to school, I very seldom did I have to take any slack or anything or being dogged out, because not only were these boys performing during the regular season, but they were performing in the postseason as well. That's like right now, if you're a Cowboys fan, you hear it left and right. Dak this one and that one. They weren't running their mouth about Troy Aikman and Roger Staubach like that, because those boys, those teams were winning. Now, it isn't a one-person show. Those teams were built to win. But they were pre-free agency. And I love the organization. I love the Cowboys. I just don't think as an organization, and I really don't think most of the NFL has really grasped how to handle free agency as a whole. Because Dallas is sending out, they're shelling out money for the talent that they draft and they've nurtured. And I agree with that philosophy, because you don't want to see those players walk. I guarantee you the Giants regret letting Saquon Barkley walk. Look what he's doing in Philly. He could have been doing that for the Giants. Not to that scale, probably, because they didn't have the offensive line the entire time he was there to allow him to succeed like that. They didn't have the quarterback nor the wide receivers per se that the Philadelphia Eagles have given him and surrounded him with. But it has to be, I know, like Jason on here on Boom Broadcasting, he has to sit there and look and say, why wasn't he doing that here? Why did you let him go away? Why did you let him go to the Eagles? I get that. And so, if you're sitting there and you got that Saquon jersey in blue and white, and you're sitting there going, I want to rip that thing up, burn it, whatever the case may be. I felt that way about DeMarco Murray when he left and went to the Eagles. Of course, he sucked that year he went to the Eagles. But again, they overpaid. Now, another team comes in and bails them out. Thank you very much. I don't know how Howie Roseman does that crap. But they bail them out. They get bailed out so many times. And so it's like, this was the era when these guys, they were there for their careers for the most part. And you got to build that relationship with that team. You got to know them. And then coming in at number 66, number 77, Jim Jeffcoat. Now, Jeffcoat, he started his career at a rough point, because 83 wasn't our best, and that time frame wasn't necessarily our best football. And then at the tail end of his career, he was there for the Super Bowl wins with under Jimmy. So at least he got a ring. And that's one of those things where you see a guy that's been nothing but talent, nothing but stand-up guy, and you're sitting there going, man, can we get him a ring? And you're sitting there and you're going, can we get him a ring? And we're sitting there this year and we're sitting there going, Zach maybe played his final game in the Dallas Cowboys. And he should have had a ring. And we might not get him one. Jeffcoat was lucky enough for us to get him one. A couple, actually. So, And you sit there as a fan and you watch these guys throughout their career, especially when they're with one organization, and you're sitting there going, why can't we get them a ring? Why can't we get over the hump and get them a ring? And I'm going to say that. I mean, we said that about Tony Romo. Romo did everything he could for this organization, but we never, and Jerry Jones has went on record saying that was one of his biggest regrets, that he was unable to do enough to allow Tony Romo to win a Super Bowl and get a ring. Don't make the same mistake with Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons. Again, hear me, Jerry. Do not make the same mistake with Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons. Do whatever it takes to get these boys the talent around them to win a Super Bowl and hoist a Lombardi. Jimmy Jeffcoat was fortunate enough to last long enough in his career to have that opportunity as a Dallas Cowboy. Unfortunately, we've got guys that haven't been this fortunate. Tyron Smith, DeMarcus Ware. Now, DeMarcus went and won his with Denver and Peyton, but he wasn't able to do it here. So it takes a little thing away from the Cowboys nation. Again, don't let it happen to Dak and Micah. Get the talent around them to win a Super Bowl. Treat them like we treated Jim Jeffcoat. Allow them to hoist a Lombardi. Allow us as fans to enjoy another Lombardi. And for those fans that are younger who have never experienced that thrill, to experience that. The drought needs to end. Not the NFC Championship drought, the Lombardi drought. That's the only one that counts. Going to the Super Bowl and winning, not winning, does nothing for the ego. Does nothing for anything else. Just makes you sad. Trust me. If you've never experienced it, trust me. It only reaps benefits when you're like Cincinnati, Kansas City has been over the last several years, where they're lifting them, where New England was lifting them. Tom Brady was lifting them. That's all the thing that matters. Now, folks, I'm going to sign off here today. I wish you the best Monday. Go Cowboys, win tonight. So I can rag it in on my Cincinnati friends and let them know that star is all that matters, baby. And the paraphrase words of the great late American dream, Dusty Rhodes. Born second to none and has no equals. America's team, number one in your fandom, number one in your heart. God bless you. Have a great Monday. Go Cowboys, and let's celebrate a victory on Dad and the boys.